And so I call on all landlord TDs in the Dáil to recuse themselves from voting on this bill, from furthering their own economic and class interests at the expense of the renter class, of ordinary working class people and their families. Minister O'Donnell said that a greater majority of the market are people that we know. And doesn't that encapsulate the problem? Yes, they are. They're people that you know, people that Fianna Fáil knows, people that the Healy-Rae landlord party over there know. The problem, a major political problem we have in this country, is that we have a landlord's government accountable to a landlord's Dáil. The last time this bill was debated, it was defeated by only 14 votes. If the landlord TDs in the Dáil had done the right thing, if they'd recused themselves, our bill would have passed. And so I want to start by saying that no TD who is a landlord or who owns a rental property should be voting on this bill. That includes 1 in 5 of the current Cabinet, Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, Minister Stephen Donnelly and Minister Norma Foley. The Dáil Code of Conduct for TDs states that members must base their conduct on a consideration of the public interest and are individually responsible for preventing conflicts of interest. It is obvious to anybody watching this debate that a conflict of interest exists if you are a landlord TD voting against this bill. Because if the bill is passed, it would impact directly on the economic self-interest of landlord TDs who are charging extortionate rents. It would limit the amount of rent that they can suck from their tenants every month and would reduce the market value of their asset. Ironically, it wouldn't actually have any impact on the case that Deputy Healy-Rae was referencing. The names of the landlord TDs in the Dáil who should not vote on this bill because they have a clear conflict of interest are as follows: Taoiseach Leo Varadkar of Fine Gael, Brian Leddin of the Green Party, Michael Creed of Fine Gael, Paul Kehoe of Fine Gael, John Paul Phelan of Fine Gael, Richard Bruton of Fine Gael, Sean Canney, Regional Independent, Noel Grealish, Regional Independent, Matt Shanahan, Independent, Alan Dillon, Fine Gael, Robert Troy, Fianna Fáil, Michael Moynihan, Fianna Fáil, Thomas Byrne, Fianna Fáil, Sean Haughey, Fianna Fáil, James Lawless, Fianna Fáil, Andreas Moynihan, Fianna Fáil, Brendan Smith, Fianna Fáil, Michael Healy-Rae, Rural Independent, Carol Nolan, Rural Independent, Alan Kelly, Labour, Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin, Stephen Donnelly, Fianna Fáil and Norma Foley, Fianna Fáil. Those people should not participate in the vote tonight. To do so is to engage in a conflict of interest. Imagine the difference that it would make to people's lives if those landlord TDs recused themselves this evening, we passed the bill at second stage and then we proceeded to pass it into law. And instead of people spending 40, 50 or even 60% of their income on rent while continually being threatened with further rent increases, they could rely instead on only ever paying a set, low percentage of their income. That's precisely the system that used to exist for so many working people in the past with large-scale council housing. It's precisely the system that successive Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour and Green Party governments have done their best to dismantle. It came to a point in 2015 where only 75 council houses were built across the entire state. And the result of that mass privatisation policy is the largest and most dysfunctional private rental sector this country has ever seen. Malcolm Noonan earlier on suggested that the private rental sector is working well for most people in this country. That is so utterly bizarre and out of touch. Not only has it resulted in some of the highest rents in the world, it has caused unprecedented levels of homelessness and terrifying housing insecurity for tens of thousands of families. I want to take this opportunity to again call on tenants who are facing eviction as a result of this landlord's government's decision to lift the eviction ban to stay in your home. Do not let this landlord, your landlord and this landlord's government make you homeless. Challenge your termination notice with the RTB, buy yourself time, demand that the council buy your home for social or cost rental housing. That's what the brave tenants of Canney House in Dublin 8 are doing. They're fighting back against their landlord's attempt to mass evict them, and it's what all tenants faced with eviction into homelessness need to do. The government keeps claiming that the money will be provided to buy the homes of people facing eviction, so let's force them to put their money where their mouth is and actually to do it. The government has the money to do whatever they want. They are rolling in it. There's €65 billion in surpluses projected between now and 2025. That's more than enough to clear the housing list several times over. It's a political choice not to do it. Instead of investing that money long-term in public housing, saving billions in HAP and RAS payments, the government is casting around for excuses not to spend it. Maybe they want to keep that €65 billion for a future bank bailout. Or maybe this time it will be investment funds or corporate landlords or some other wing of the capitalist class that will benefit from it. We know that they'll do their best to ensure that as little as possible trickles down to workers and tenants. That's why we need to build a radical housing movement on the streets, in the communities, in the workplaces that resists evictions, demands real rent controls like those in our bill, and ends the parasitic plague of landlordism that has burdened working people for generations. James Connolly once said, "Our cities can never be made really habitable or worthy of an enlightened people while the habitations of its citizens remain the property of private individuals. To permanently remedy the evils of city life, the citizens must own their city." I agree wholeheartedly, and I hope in the near future we'll have a real left government that makes Connolly's socialist vision a reality.